Hey, this is Zach. Thank you guys very much for listening to my channel, tuning in. I'm back doing videos. I've been slacking off and I've been promising to get back doing it, and I'm gonna do it slowly but surely. So I wanna thank you guys for continuously checking in. Hit that subscribe button for me. Hit the like button. Leave me a comment because I've been commenting back. And if you want, hit my Cash App. It's down there also. So I've been kind of covering my life story and all of the illicit events that I had been covering. And now it's time to talk about my federal case and the venture of when I caught my federal crime. Now, all the culminations of all my arrests were kind of like the lead-in into, I guess, my federal case, which is the big fish, the big thing that I did, which was, I guess, at one point, I had decided that if I'm gonna do this and make it a livelihood, then I have to do it well planned and not just sporadically spaced out. And as I think I mentioned before, all of this came to me at one point in my arrest when I was telling myself that I am tired of coming to jail, that consistently going out and taking other people's information and using it to commit a crime or use their identity to get credit and to buy certain things or to get certain things has just consistently led me back to jail. So then I told myself, I said, if I keep doing this, I'm just gonna end up getting the same result. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So I need to do something completely different. So I asked myself in those moments, and this is me walking back and forth in a big, humongous pod that held 100 people in the morning time. You know, there are people sleeping all over the floor, and I would just like walk in an open area back and forth because that's the only exercise you get because you don't get to go to outside recreation too often. And I walk back and forth, and in my mind, I'm asking myself, I'm like, I need to do something different because getting out and doing the same thing isn't gonna work. I said, my only option is to find a job and just start working and starting from the bottom. After I finished laughing, I told myself, okay, since I'm not ready to do that, I'm gonna have to come up with a better idea of what I'm doing. So what I had thought about simply is, what's happening to us is I would use a person's identity, right? And at some point in me using that identity, they would contact that person and they would tell that person like, hey, did you authorize this at this? Just like when we got caught in that Sears store. At some point, they actually called the victim and said, hey, is this you at Sears opening up an account? And he said, absolutely not. So once that happened, they contacted the fraud department, they took the ID and naturally they called the police and the police came and got us. And I'm saying to myself, doing that is always gonna put me at risk of going to jail. So what could I do differently? I still want to do that. I just don't want them to call the police or be able to verify that that's what I'm doing. How would I do something like that? So as I'm thinking, I said, well, what if I was the victim? Like, I had never given that a thought. I said, what if I developed a crime where I'm both the perpetrator and the victim of the crime? What happens? Because every crime has the person that commits the crime and the person that the crime is committed on. Now, don't get me wrong, because my solution only made it appear that I was the victim. There was actually another victim. But what happens is the interaction between the perpetrator and victim, I'm actually shifting all of that over to my side. So I'm making a third victim that has to identify themselves, and sometimes they can't. So what I meant by that was, it's kind of like if you have a friend that has credit cards and that friend tells you, listen, go take my cards and max them out, get this and this and this for me and get whatever you want for you. And once we get all that stuff, I'm gonna call the credit card company and tell them that I wasn't the person that made all those charges. I didn't authorize it. Naturally, what happens is the credit card company would give the money back. That was the idea I came up with. But the problem I had was I didn't know anybody that was willing to give up those type of credit cards. But in that scenario, the victim becomes the bank. The bank becomes the victim because the bank returns that money. And of course, the bank is insured by the FDIC. So really probably the victim is the government. I haven't tracked down who the victim would be in that situation. It probably would be the federal government and me contributing to our debt. But because the bank does get the money back because it's insured. But either the government or the bank becomes the victim. The person and I are no longer the victim. And the victim that normally calls the police would be the person whose card was used. If that person doesn't call the police and they're actively participating in the crime, then the bank has no idea that it's being lied to and they're the victim. So that concept is what I said I need to put into play. Now, knowing that I don't know anyone with good credit that would be willing to do that for me, I said to myself, I'm going to have to start off a little bit lower. So then I said, well, what about, so since I can't get credit cards in their name dealing with a bank, what if I just got bank accounts? What if I just use bank accounts and like that gentleman told me and my wife that if you put money in the bank and someone steals that money using your debit card, you are not responsible for that money. So what if I took a person who can get a bank account, put money in their account, took the money out, and then told the bank that, hey, I wasn't the one that took the money out and the bank gives the money back? What if I did that? So using that concept, this is, and of course, I'm explaining this to you like me talking to you. In jail, as I'm walking back and forth, I'm formulating a plan in my head. So the formulation of a plan is, okay, I could probably get out and open up a couple of accounts and we can pull that off a couple of times. Because initially it felt like a great plan, but it's very limited to the point of what I can do. So I'm saying to myself, okay, I can do that myself, but I'm not able to do that on a consistent basis enough to maintain or make any money. So then what I thought about is I'm going to need other people to do it, right? So that I can consistently make that money. Now I could start asking other people, but I'd have to depend on their trust. So what I probably need to do is I probably need to have access to people, right? To be able to use them without them knowing it, without them being claimed to be a victim. This is all kind of getting confusing because I wanted full control over the entire situation of what appeared to be the crime happening. And I didn't want to work with or deal with a lot of people. I just wanted that control, cause the crime in effect, get the money, and then keep moving on. How would I do that? So I asked myself, where can I find people that I could use to open up a bank account that wouldn't complain about me using them to open up a bank account? And so, I mean, I'm pondering, I'm walking back and forth. I'm in this big dorm in jail, and I'm asking, where are people like that? Where would I find those people? And when I ask myself, I look around the room and I say to myself, you find those people in jail. As a matter of fact, you don't even just find them in jail, you can find them in prison. As a matter of fact, you can find them that have been in prison for a very long time, and society has actually forgot about them as a human being. Their presence and identity is in the federal system, in the system as a whole. They're just not active. And if you access those people, then you can open up bank accounts using those people. Those people are not going to call the cops because the cops aren't going to go to the jail and say, hey, did you? So that being the case, if I did that, then I have absolute full control of a crime happening. So my concept was to assume the identity of a person serving a life sentence, use that person to open up various bank accounts, place my own money in those accounts, take my money out of that account, tell the bank that I don't know who took my money, have the bank give me back the money. So upon my understanding, if let's say I did that each lifer, I did 3 accounts, and on each account, I did $5,000. So for each lifer, I would make $15,000. So if I put the 5 in, give or take the 5 out, have the bank replace the 5 3 times for each lifer, that's $15,000 I would make on each lifer. I'm like, that's pretty good money for one lifer. So I figured, what's the limitation of people in prison? We'll figure it out. So that was the basic concept I have. I'm in jail. Now, at that point in time, I think I did about 6 or 7 months in jail. I got bonded out. This is when I met my star player, Mr. Neo, the one that helped me formulate the IDs and helped me with some online information. He was a big initiative. He's the person that when we did the hotel scam, he actually had developed where I could fax to you what looked like the front and back of my credit card. So we had Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. We got a copy of each card front and back, and he set it up to where I could change the numbers on the card, and then I would just use that name and then fax an ID. So anyone can stay at a hotel based on what he set up for me. So he was the person that actually put that together for me. So I met him in there, and he was very incremental in my bonding out on that deal. I developed that complete plan. My whole idea was I was going to contact people doing life. At that point in time, I think George Bush was president, and he had came up with what's called the Second Chance Act. So I would write them, tell them about the Second Chance Act, tell them if I need to know your background, because if you grew up poor or under the poverty level, then you would be eligible to receive some type of clemency or computation of your sentence based on the fact you grew up under the poverty level. So I need you to give me your name and date of birth and everything, all the information I would need. Now, I did that because when I got out, I wanted to obtain a driver's license in that person's name. And when I went to the DMV and I said, look, I've lost everything. What do I have to bring you to show you I'm me in order to get a driver's license? And they basically said, well, if you don't have a duplicate and you're not in the state where you originally got your license, then you need to bring me your birth certificate, maybe a social security card, a copy of a utility bill. They gave you like 4 or 5 things, some like vehicle registration. Well, a utility bill and a vehicle registration, Photoshop took care of that immediately. To get your birth certificate, all I needed was information about your birth and your mom, your parents. And to get your social security card, all I had to show them was a prison ID that we used to laminate. We made up ourselves on a computer and laminated. So we'd go into the social security office and say, hey, I just got out of jail. Can I get my social security card? They'll say, well, we're going to mail it to you. So we fill out the little form and they'd give you a paper that ended up saying, hey, he's ordered his social security card and let this paper count as a social security card. Well, we were doing that, going to the social security office for a while. And then I realized, well, I could just Photoshop this paper. I don't have to keep going to the social security office. I can Photoshop the paper and all I need is the birth certificate and this paper and they'll let me get an ID. So once I sent those people letters about the Second Chance Act, and they sent me their information, their name, social, where they were born, and parents' name. I ordered their birth certificate. I would go to the DMV in a different state, get an ID in their name, and then I would go and open up bank accounts. Now, we did that, my wife and I, we did that on the scale because we did men and women. I would be a guy, and of course, I don't know why I'm explaining it. I would do the guy and she'd do the girl. We never reversed that. But so after we did about 4 or 5 people at about 15,000 each person, we had us a nice little nest egg where we were able to get a house. Of course, at this time, when I was released and she got out of jail, at this time we found out she was pregnant. And so in my mind, part of my plan also included the fact that I wanted to do something to set us up so that we didn't have to commit fraud for the rest of our lives. Like we could actually make a ton of money and then stop. So I was going to try to come up with a plan for that. And I'm going to speak more a little bit on that a little bit later. But that was part of the goal. So getting out, our setup was to get access to enough people, enough inmates that could get 3 accounts that we would do to What Me. And we would actually, when we put the money in the account, so I would put the $5,000 in the account, and then I would take their debit card and go to the post office and buy postal money orders like we used to do when we did the bad checks in the account, pull the money out of the account, call up the bank, tell them that that wasn't me, I wasn't the person that put the money in there, and they would give the money back. My goal was to continuously to get that on a rotating basis. Now, after we did a couple, we had money, we had ended up buying us a house and getting settled in. My plan at that point was, okay, we can't keep doing these. Why can't I just hire someone or find us some workers that would actually go out and do it? And we kind of ventured into that, because then my fantasy became, you take 2 workers, you send them somewhere, you fly them into like Cincinnati, Ohio. They get off the plane. Each worker has 2 identities. So they go to 2 different DMVs. They become 2 different persons in Cincinnati. Each person opens up 3 accounts. So that means there's four identities with 3 accounts apiece. So that's going to be a total of 12 accounts. So they would go fly to Cincinnati, open up 12 accounts. When they open up those 12 accounts, I take the same $5,000 and run them through all 12 accounts. So at the end, I've got my same $5,000, but the bank 12 times gives me $5,000 back. So of course that ends up being $6,000. $6,500 if you count $65,000 if you count the $5,000 I started off with. I would pay the person that actually went $10,000 and we profit $50,000. Great plan. Because we are the victim and the perpetrator, the police were never involved. So there should never, ever be a problem or any reverberation or any blowback for this. This was, of course, the plan. It sounded brilliant. Matter of fact, when we did get our first team to go out and do it, and it was successful, and we made our money and we gave them $10,000, I'm telling myself, I'm like, I don't know why I picked 5,000 as a number, because what if I did 10,000? Because all FDI and your money in the bank is insured up to $100,000. And what had happened is we had actually stolen about $80,000 out of an account once, and I heard that the bank gave back all of that money. And hearing that blew my mind, because I felt like we had taken the money over such a long period of time that the bank would never give that money back, and they actually did. Because that's an American banking system. It's not like, hey, you were dumb, you didn't pay attention, we're not going to give you your money back. It's because you were a victim of fraud and we want you to keep you as a customer, here's all of your money back that it was stolen, because I guess it's insured. Why not? Knowing that, I asked myself, why am I doing $5,000? Why not do $10,000 in 12 accounts? So that changes my profit from $50,000 to $110,000. I'm thinking 10 or 15 of those, then we're millionaires and we can kick back and relax. We can actually buy a little property, maybe get us some rental houses to rent out, and raise our kids and family and become successful. Get out of the fraud game and the risk of going to jail. That were the thoughts that went through my head. So when it came time for us to stop doing it ourselves, because we would do it, my wife and I, whenever money got tight or low, we would simply go out and do whatever scheme that we had going on, and no one pulled it off better than us. No one was able to execute as well as we did. And I think that left me with a false sense of, hey, this is easy, anybody can do it. because that's absolutely not true. So trying to recruit people, I asked myself one day, I said, I need to find someone that's willing to commit a crime, right? That's a criminal. I need to find someone that's probably doing theft and be able to try to convince them or catch them in a portion of their life where they're kind of down on their luck, having a hard time, and would like a quick come up that would actually do this scheme to help us get this money. And if it works out one time, the minimum I make is 50 grand and the max I can make is 110. So, I mean, why not just run it through? So I said, where can I meet people like that? Where is it that you can find people that are criminals and actually know what they're charged with? Because you kind of go online and you might type in the name Smith at one of the Department of Corrections websites or county jail website, and then you go through and you don't really know the extent of what they're done. You don't know the extent of their life history. I'm like, I need to know everything you can about that person. Like, I need someone to give me a rundown about their past, just like they did me in first appearance. Because, you know, in the United States, by law, by the constitutional right, you're entitled within 24 hours of your arrest to have your charges read to you. And then, of course, at that point in time, a judge decides whether you get a bond. And in making that decision of whether you get a bond, the state or the government list your priors. They're like, oh, Your Honor, I don't know if you should give this guy a bond. You know, he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. The way they read off my priors every first appearance, I said, I need to hear some qualifying people's priors. And I'm like, well, why not go to a first appearance hearing? So we're in Georgia, of course. I call up, and it wasn't Fulton County, which I probably should have went. I went to Cobb County's because I'd been in Cobb County's first appearance, and I know how it goes. It's all on video, but people go into the courthouse downtown, but it's all relayed off videos. So I said, why not go to a first appearance hearing with paper and pencil and hear like what's going on and who's been arrested and see if you find any interesting prospects. So I got up one morning, the first appearance is about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and I went to the first appearance, clogged up little video, and this is when video, because it used to be first appearance back in the 90s when I was getting arrested. At first appearance was a live judge would come into the jail, and if you wanted to go to first appearance, they'd have to usher you through the jail to show up. At that point in time when I was doing this, some counties were still stuck in the past, but most of them did video. Now, everywhere is video. Even regular court become video. So, since the pandemic. So I went to the first appearance hearing, which is all televisioned up, and I sat in the back, which is weird because they asked me who I was there for. I don't even remember what I said. You know, they're like, well, who? Because they're like, we need to know because I don't know if they're coming to first appearance today. I said, trust me, they'll be at first appearance. So I sat in the back with paper and pencil, and I listened as they called off people's names. Now, the reason I remember, the first time I went, I remember this, because I got one of our most well, I wouldn't say best. I'll say most dedicated worker, which was a gentleman named Sean. I got to see if I can remember Sean's last name. I don't know if I want to give Sean's last name. But I met Sean. Shane, not Sean, Shane. And his girl, him and Andra became one of our best teams of workers. And I got his name at that first appearance. Now, what he was in jail for, I think it had nothing, it was for a theft where he had stolen something, right? No. He had pawned something that was stolen, right? And his bond was like $4,000, $400. So what I would do is, and all of his priors had to do with theft. He was kind of like a little thief where he'd steal stuff out of the store. But you had some people that were there for checks. You had some people that were there for violent crimes, domestic violence. So I would write them down. When a name came up, I'd jot the name down. And of course, if I didn't like their priors, if they did something that wasn't really theft related, I'd scratch them out. So I came out of there with a list of about 5 names. It was about 40 people, but I came out with 5 names. What I decided the first time I did that, I told myself, I'm like, so how do I get in touch with these people? What do I do? So I said, well, some of them are going to bond out. Some of them are going to get out of jail. And at that point in time, I'm not going to be able to find them. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to hold on to their name for about a week and a half and then go back in and find out who's there. I need somebody that can't bond out because I want to proposition them when they bond out. I want to send them a letter, let them know who I am, tell them I'll be happy to help them get bonded out of jail. Get them out of jail and see if they'll want to work with me. This was my thought process. So I waited. Of course, I went back about 4 times because when I sent my first batch of letters in, it was about 13 letters I sent in. Out of the 13 letters, I got about 9 calls. Some people are like, hey, this is a hoax. I'm not calling that guy. So I got about 9 calls, and just from my interaction with people, Shane was one I liked. There was another guy I liked. His name was Michael. So what I did was when I talked to him and I thought I liked him, I said, listen, when they called me, I said, hey, I'm a friend of course I'm lying. I said, a friend of mine told me that you got caught. Because I'm trying to buy them out. Because when I say that, most of the time they go, who? Jay? John? Matt? It seems like, go, hey, a friend of ours told me you got caught. They go, who? Matt? I go, yeah, Matt told me. But I go, don't say his name anymore. I'm like, let's try to act like Matt doesn't exist, but please know that we've got a camaraderie already. Like, we kind of run in the same circles. So I wanted to give them that familiarity. So they would mention the name. I'd say, listen, him and I were talking about what the things I got going on, and there's a chance for you to make some money, about $10,000. I think you'd be really good at it. If you're down, I'm thinking about bonding you out, and let's get to this money. It depends on their reaction. Some people were kind of like, well, if I'm making 10, how much you're making? It became like a psychology test of what type of personality you had. It came down to, like I said, 2 people that I really liked. So once I decided that, yes, I'm going to bond you out, and yes, we're going to work together, what I did was I took the track phones that my girl and I used to use, and I would take it down, and I would say, this is their property. I got their vehicle. I'd go down to the jail and tell the jail that I claimed their vehicle, and this was the property they had in their vehicle. Can I add it to their property they have down here at the jail? Of course, they said yes. And they would add the cell phone that had 1 phone number in it. When they got out, when I talked to them again on the phone, I said, I'm bonding you out today. When you get out, there's a cell phone in your property. This is before everyone had a cell phone. There's a cell phone in your property. When you get out, call me on that cell phone and I'm gonna tell you what to do. Naturally, I used other people's credit card and put them up in a hotel room where we would meet with them and would tell them exactly how we wanted them to do this step-by-step process of going to the DMV, assuming the identity of someone that's in prison for the rest of their life, then going and opening up 3 bank accounts in that name. And then once I do my magic, because I was in full control, when they opened the account, I received everything. They opened up a P.O. box, and I had all that mail forwarded to me back in the state, because I never wanted them to do it in the state that they lived in. I wanted them to go out into a different state, so that gave me a chance to control everything. So once I had control of everything, I'd put the money in, we'd pull the money out, and then we would have them go into the bank and tell the banker that, hey, someone stole our money. Once the banker put the money out, put the money back, I would then have that money withdrawn out of that account, and then I would pay them. My wife and I had so much money built up that I would actually pay them once the job was done, because I already know what's going to go on behind the scenes once they're there, once they set this up. Beautiful. To let you know, with Michael and with Shane and Andrew, when they teamed up, to let you know, both of those 2 people's first runs went off without a problem. I did the $5,000 and we made 50 grand. Matter of fact, Shane and Andrew were able to pull off 3 runs with no problem, which made me $150,000. Michael was able to successfully pull off 2 runs. And it was only 2. That's when I learned that when you're dealing with people from jail, you're not dealing with the best quality of people when it comes to employment or just being a good person in general. And that's when the nightmare of my dream plan started coming apart. Because now I'm dealing with unsavory people. And unfortunately for me, what I had put together walking around in the jail was working and working well. And I had started to adapt a lifestyle where I felt like that money was going to be consistent. And so I needed it desperately to be done, which kind of put me in a pickle. So I'm going to talk more about that in my next video. I got to keep you guys on edge. We can't put all this together at one time. But it just goes to show sometimes that when you put your mind to something and you think about the details, you can put it in action. Unfortunately for me back then, it was criminal action. For me right now, I need to put my mind to developing this channel, bringing a lot of good content that you guys are interested in, and bringing you some good interviews and good people I deal with, and some good ideas and some good entertainment. Doing it the legal way. Thinking about it step by step and doing the process that's needed for me to make money doing YouTube and entertaining you guys so you refer me to your friends. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to start on my next video telling you how my ingenious plan started coming apart based on the people I was dealing with. By the way, this was the plan that ended me up in federal prison. This is what got me on the Fed's radar of what's going on and brought them into our lives. It was a culmination of putting all this together and it working out that kind of brought me into the mix. And what's so funny is it wasn't just a matter of what we were doing. It was a matter of who we were working with. And that's all the feds need for a conspiracy. Make sure you tune in for my next podcast. Until then, do me a favor, hit that like button. Please leave me a comment and tune in to my next podcast. Thank you.